Hey there berries, Bizzleberry here, bringing you a video on the preseason changes for Season 12. There's three main changes coming into this patch. From what I can tell and the information that I've gathered, there's no specific champion changes this patch. So doing a tier list would be a little bit silly, I think, at this very moment in time. So I'm going to wait until the next patch in 2 weeks' time in order to make a new support tier list for Season 12. So today we're going to be talking about some of the new items that are coming into League, some of the new dragons, and some of the new runes. Let's talk about the runes first, since we've already got one of those active on my Soraka here. There are two new runes coming, well, one new rune coming into Inspiration and one change. So the new rune is First Strike. It's active, as you can see here, by the floating blue Pokeball. Now this is where if you're not in champion combat and you start getting yourself in champion combat, so if we auto hit this dummy, we get 5 gold, and then also for a very brief period of time we will do bonus damage to the target that we're attacking. So that could be very good on something like Zyra, Brand, generally any of the AP supports. Doing it necessarily on a healer is a little bit iffy, because if you heal a champion that's already attacking another champion, you're going to then put yourself in champion combat, and then if you damage a champion after that, you're not going to get the First Strike activation. So playing champions like healers in general probably won't be able to use First Strike. Tanks as well would also have a tough time because they might get hit first before going in. So this is all about getting the first hits. So long range poking support champions like the Zera for Zyra plants, they will activate the First Strike, and those will be the ones to benefit the most from this rune. Glacial Augments had a change where if you crowd control a target with a 25-second cooldown on the rune, it will basically kind of do what Glacial Augment does when you have it and you root a target essentially anyway. So it will do like the slowing target, the slowing zones around, and also that target will do less damage to allied champions. So this could be quite good on champions that are mobilized a lot, support champions at the start of a team fight. Say you land a center W on a carry. That means that they're going to do less damage, and also they'll be slowed more often in that fight, so they'll be more prone to actually getting caught and dying in the first place. You got like Lux Bindings, Morgana Binding, Zyra E Root, Nami Bubble, and Knockup could do quite nicely with the Glacial Augment. It's all about if you're happy to sacrifice, you know, such things like the First Strike or the Summon Airy or the Comet in terms of those other runes, whether it's worth doing extra crowd control in the fights. It could be quite nice if you're like the only person in the team doing any crowd control whatsoever, or maybe your team needs peel and you're not necessarily able to provide that, your team isn't necessarily able to provide that too much, so maybe the Glacial Augment would be the thing to help slow down the enemy to getting to your carries. There is one other rune change that's coming which kind of impacts support in a way. You probably won't necessarily be taking it on anything apart from potentially Senna, and that's the new lethal tempo change. When you get max stacks of lethal tempo, your range increases. I think at the moment it's 50 for melee and 100 for ranged. So if you are noticing that you are getting attacked from further distance from AD carriers than usual, then it's probably the lethal tempo rune that is activated, and yeah, the extra 100 range will be quite noticeable when it does activate. So that's the rune changes. Those are the main rune changes, at least anyway. There might be some minor ones coming in during the preseason, or they might revert Glacial Augment, for example. And also just a slight note, like First Strike is very similar in a way to like kind of like that old Kleptomancy, like that is kind of coming back. Like, so I don't know if there's any way that we could maybe play something potentially a little bit cheesy, but at this the cooldown on the First Strike is actually relatively long, so it's 15 seconds at level 18, so it's a little bit higher cooldown when you are first starting at the game, so you're probably not going to get you know, the maximum amount off. But if we use it here, the First Strike, you do get the extra gold also when you do that first hit. So it is very vital that when you are doing damage onto a target to proc that off, that you are then unleashing as much damage as possible on top of that target. So you get +5 gold for the initial harassment, and then depending on how much damage you're able to do, like there we got 61 in that very short time frame. So make the most out of your first strike cooldown. Also, just an add, just what I've noticed actually is that the strike cooldown happens on this very first hit. So as you're bashing down in the next few seconds on your target, it then makes so that it shaves off an extra few seconds off the first strike, because it still has it active, if that makes sense. So yeah, so first strike, very interesting rune, as long as you're able to not only attack an opponent but also unload damage. So once again, like if you're able to do like an insane Lux combo, like binding into E to laser, the amount of damage that you're going to do on a target during that period of time, that will give you a decent chunk of extra income. So AP supports potentially rejoice over this. Right, so that's the runes kind of covered. We've got items. 2 new mythic items that are coming into the game. Let's have a look here. I did make a new item set. Let me just sell a couple of these items. So one of the new mythic items is Crown of the Shattered Queen. It's probably not going to be picked up on any support, any AP support necessarily. I personally feel like you might want to go into Zhonya's instead. But if you're not familiar with this item, you're basically safeguarded when you take champion damage. So the first instance of champion damage. So think of it more like a Banshee's Veil. And then for 1.5 seconds, you take 75% less damage. So if you're playing something like Lux, for example, and you land a binding on someone, Crown will proc. And then if you do your full combo on that person, your E and your laser straight away, then that person's going to mitigate that by 75%. So it's worth knowing about this item, particularly if you are playing those burstier kind of champions. But overall, you won't be picking up. But you can tell whoever has this item by this yellow glow that they have on them. If they have this yellow glow, just maybe try and poke it off and then do your full burst combo on that target, otherwise it will just get reduced. So other items here are mythic items that we need to talk about. The other one is Even Shroud. So this is the new tank support item, so you'll be picking this up potentially on like a Leona or a Nautilus. After you immobilize a champion, you'll cause that target and all targets, enemy champions, to take 12% increased damage for 5 seconds. And also, you're going to be getting extra armor and magic resist from the other legendary items in your inventory. So it's overall going to make you pretty tanky, and it's going to enable your team to do more damage against a particular target. So it's quite a little bit like Abyssal Mask, or at least like how the old Abyssal Mask used to work. They've now changed how Abyssal Mask works by reducing the enemy's magic resistance, but it's kind of similar to that, which is really nice because Abyssal Mask was kind of an item that you wanted as a tank, but it's kind of difficult to get into. So this is basically that, plus you get it a little bit earlier, plus I believe it's a little bit stronger at 12%. I think Abyssal Mask used to be 10%. But Even Shroud is the good alternative now. You can choose between this and the Locket. They did change Chem Tank, Turbo Chem Tank overall, but I'm not really too fully sure on this item. Once again, we'll have to test it out. I'm not fully sure if the actual changes are in this item at the moment, but I'm honestly looking like the stats on Even Shroud are particularly nice, and it's only 2,500 gold. It looks really nice. We can activate, we can't activate it because it's a passive, but we could get the immobilization here from the Equinox from Soraka. So it kind of made that little noise there, and they also glow a little bit white or when they are crowd controlled. There's a slight white glow shimmer there and a little thing on the floor. If we can put another target dummy on the ground next to it, we can maybe see what it's like with more targets around. Let's get that away from the turret, please. It's quite a loud noise, and then all of these are kind of like glowing white slightly. So that's the Even Shroud. So let's sell that, and then we're looking at Winter's Approach. So these next 3 items are legendary items, so you can take them, you can have, technically you could have all 3 items in your inventory if you wanted to. Winter's Shroud is the cheapest legendary of the 3. It is a mana item, so this could be quite interesting on something like Blitzcrank. It's basically another tier stacking item, and then it will convert into Thimble Winter. So basically, when you're striking and hitting a target, if you're not familiar with tier, you build up the stacks, you get them up to 360 mana. And then once you get the Winter's Approach to 360 mana, then it will automatically convert into the Thimble Winter. Ignore the fact that it's saying 5,200 gold for it. You don't have to pay for this convert. It does it automatically. I don't know why it does. It does this with Mana Mune and stuff as well. So Thimble Winter. It will gain a new passive, and if you immobilize or slow, if you're melee an enemy champion, it uses 3% of your current mana and gives you a shield, absorbing damage. The shield is increased by 80% if there's more than 1 enemy nearby. So you can see how this is kind of like nice in combination with the Even Shroud. You can see how like you might want 2 of those items stacked up. I would say something like, actually maybe on Blitzcrank. Blitzcrank does benefit nicely from maximum mana from his passive, but getting the maximum mana from that might be quite difficult. You're going to want to basically do a lot more damaging attacks and abilities to champions in order to get this to pop off. So you could maybe make this work. You could still try on Blitzcrank if you really want to. If you can get that to, you know, fully convert his shield on his passive, it's going to be a lot stronger. But you're basically looking at potentially like the Leona and Nautilus again, Thresh, anyone that casts a lot of, you know, low cooldown damaging abilities in a fight will give you the highest amount of tier stacks. Also, you might be slightly encouraged as well to use abilities on minions in order to get +3 bonus mana from the tier. If you do hit champions, you do get +6, but this is basically, you know, it's going to take quite a long time to get this tier stack, so I'd be kind of curious to see how long this will take. Yeah, it's potentially an okay item for tank supports in combination with the Even Shroud. We'll have to test it out and see how long it takes for a tier to stack up on something like a Leona. An assassin item now, which looks extremely good for Pike. Axiom Arc gives you lethality and ability haste and attack damage. And its passive is whenever a champion dies within 3 seconds of having damaged them, refund 25% of your current of your ultimate's total cooldown. So if you have damaged champions recently with Pike and then you ult them, then yeah, you're gonna get you're basically gonna have your ulti almost back off cooldown again, which is kind of insane. So champions like Pike could benefit from this. Senna could maybe pick this up too. She doesn't do too badly with the vanity. So if you do like hit a couple of enemy champions across the map and they die, that's going to make your ultimate basically 50% potentially off cooldown again. So you can kind of see potentially the snowball effect of that. And then the last item is Shadow Flame. Not 100% sure if AP mage supports are going to necessarily pick this one up. It's basically an anti-shield casting item. It does cost quite a lot at 3,000. I think honestly it's probably out of reach for any AP support at that price. But just so that you are aware of what it does, it damages, when you damage an enemy champion, you get magic penetration. If they have a shield, you get 20 magic penetration. So basically it will allow you to do even more damage to targets that have their shields active. So when I say like anti-shield, it's like a little bit in its kit, but honestly it's not that crazy. But if you are up against like someone who does shield a lot, like Lux for example, and you're playing like Zyra and you've got a Leandries and the debuffs like ticking off on random targets, you're going to be getting 20 magic penetration against all of those shielded targets, which, you know, could in theory add up quite nicely. We'll have to see how it goes. In my opinion, it does look a little bit on the weak side, but we'll have to wait and see for that one. So those are all the items and all the rune changes in terms of the new items being added. There are several different item changes and balancing and things like that to different items in the game. One of the ones that we looked at was briefly was the abyssal mask, now reducing magic resist in nearby targets. But there's a lot of different changes going on in this patch. We will now talk about the dragon. As you can see at the top, we've got the Chem Tech dragon. I tried to recreate some of the environmental changes on the PvE, but unfortunately I was unable to. But the TLDR behind that one is there are two new drakes. There's the Chem Tech dragon, and you also have the Hex Tech dragon. So the Chem Tech dragon gives you 5% more damage when you are attacking something with more health than you. So this is going to work on pretty much every support. Supports, even tanks, generally don't end up having too much HP. But once again, this kind of benefits like Yuumi and the AP Mage supports. So AP Mage support's getting quite a lot of loving this patch, honestly. You've also got the Hex Tech dragon. That one gives you ability haste and attack speed. And the environmental changes for those two dragons, the Chem Tech will basically, so if you're familiar with the Cloud Drake and how like this red buff for example would have the speed up, instead it would all be camouflaged. To my knowledge, the red and the blue buff areas on both sides of the map will have giant camouflaged areas on the terrain. So that's what happens when it's like that terrain change. So if you don't understand how the terrain changes work, once a team has killed two dragons, or any team has killed, if 2 total dragons have died in a game, the next dragon that spawns will augment the entire map and also will be the dragon's soul. So if it is the Chem Tech dragon, the blue and the red buff areas will basically be stealth. Not sure if there'll be any other areas, but that is basically the gist of it. Hex Tech will open up 2 portals on the map, and you can teleport to another area of the map by just walking into the portal. So for example, if there was a portal behind the dragon pit, it would teleport you to somewhere around about in the blue buff area. That is the gist, and there'll be 2 of those on the map. All of these are open to change during preseason. We'll have to see what Riot does with this, but that is the general idea. If you do manage to get to the actual souls of those, Chem Tech dragon basically allows you to respawn after dying, but then you do die after a few seconds, kind of like Sign passive. And the Hex Tech soul will give you chain lightning, kind of like static, and also allows you to, those procs will slow the target down. So kind of like a chain lightning slow effect onto your auto attacks and potentially your abilities as well. I'm assuming it would work on your abilities. It would be kind of weird if it didn't, but that is my knowledge to you, passed to you. And if anyone does end up getting to those, I'm sure they'll probably make it so Hex Tech dragons and Chem Tech dragons spawn more often during preseason, as I'm sure they're going to want to test them out. So we will probably see these terrain changes a lot in the next few weeks. But that is the big overall rundown of everything. Do bear in mind there are still a lot of mini item changes and things like that. Some very brief ones I can tell you is that some of the fantasy items are about 100 gold cheaper. We also have Cosmic Drive as well, I believe has been changed ever so slightly. The stat allocation has been changed so that I believe it now gives a bit more ability power on its passive, but they've taken away some of the movement speed. We've had Locket of the Iron Solari is, I believe, 100 gold cheaper on the Legion. So if we go to Lockets, which is the other mythic item, they apparently, I think it was 1,500 on the locket on the Aegis. I think, if my brain serves me correctly, and it's gone down to 1.4k. But all of these are kind of like minor balancing things at this stage, and I don't want to dive too much into it. I will say Doran's Ring is probably the biggest item change that you might be wanting to be aware of, just in case you do play mid. It's worth mentioning actually, because they've changed how the mana restore function happens. So it's encouraging you to trade with enemy champions in order to generate mana regeneration, and if you already are maximum mana when you're hitting an enemy champion, you instead get health back. So you could end up seeing this kind of Doran's Ring on AP carries on the bot lane, so it's worth noting that you don't want to actually get poked by them, because otherwise you'll be giving them mana regen. So just a nice little heads up there. But I hope the preseason is fun, and I'm sure there'll be lots of balance changes, and we're going to be talking about you know, what supports are benefiting the most from this. I think my favorite look is this first strike, and the fact that if you do hit a target and then whack down as quickly as possible everything that you have, then you will generate some extra income. So it's going to be a fun little mini game to play for sure in the laning phase. So you, once again, you get a tiny bit of gold on the initial first hit, and then depending on how much damage you do after that, you get extra gold. But this will probably benefit more like the Zyras, the Luxes, the Brands. So I think AP mages are probably going to have the most fun this patch. So if you are wanting to try something, try First Strike with one of those AP mages. It should be in theory quite fun. I wish you all the best, and I'll see you guys in 2 weeks for a more support kind of specific, like what champions are going to be good during the rest of the preseason. All the best, take care, and if you do want to ask me any questions, feel free to leave one in the comment section down below, or check if I am live streaming at twitch.tv/Bizzleberry. Oh yeah, and one other thing, don't forget to stay very awesome. Take care, guys.